As we think of two icons in their own right, committing suicide within the same week, understand that this conversation is not made in jest. I'm very, very serious about this conversation. A lot of times, we don't have conversations because they're difficult to have. We don't have conversations because we feel like we must have all the answers before we even begin a dialogue. That is not the case. A lot of times our answers come because of the dialogue. In the process, our answers often come. It's hard to wrap our minds around someone or people that are wealthy or have affluence or are popular, resorting to these kinds of things. You know, we think of people with all the money. We think of people with all the power. We think of people with popularity. Certainly, they have no problems. But logic betrays us in that kind of thought. And why don't we have these conversations? We don't have these conversations with our children. We don't have these conversations with young people. We don't have the conversations with older people. We don't have these conversations with adults because they're uncomfortable. And yet life is not convenient. We don't reach a certain age and then everything's convenient. That is not so. Does that mean that we are to be prepared for everything that happens? Certainly we should prepare. Certainly. The things that we have enough knowledge about to prepare for ahead of time, absolutely. But we are not prepared for everything. And because something affects one of us one way, doesn't mean that everyone responds the same. That leads me back to the two icons in their own right, committing suicide within the same week, excuse me. Why don't we have these conversations? I'm not going to speak about what my state could do differently as it relates to prevention, intervention, awareness, training. I want to speak to you. If someone you knew, someone you loved, someone you were close to, someone that you cared about was suicidal, how would you know? What would that look like? Would they look different? Would they act different? Would their hobbies become different? Would the way they spend their time be different? Would their eating change? Would their sleeping change? And are those things that you're even aware of as it relates to this group of people close to you, people you love, people you care about? Because I'm going to tell you, I'm certain that both of these two icons had people that cared about them and that loved them. I'm certain. I'm going to take that step without statistics and say that I'm certain that they had people that cared about them. Does that mean that all we have to do is care about someone and that will prevent a suicide or something along those lines? Maybe. In and of itself, probably not. It's a good place to start, though. And that is why when we do not have these conversations, when we do not facilitate awareness, education toward prevention and intervention, we facilitate further suicide. The reason why I'm so passionate right now is because many of us belong to churches. Many of us participate in organizations and community outreach programs, community centers, community-funded events and gatherings where these kinds of conversations should and could take place. Many of us participate and belong to different organizations that by mission statement and aim, model, and goal alone focus on the well-being, empowerment, and enriching of the lives of the people that participate. And yet we don't have these conversations even in those venues. Please do some rudimentary exploration into what suicide is, what can cause it, what it may look like, and have a 3-minute conversation with the people you love. We don't need another person to commit suicide because we're not aware, because we don't take the time to study, to know, to watch. And better yet, we don't allow those who ask to be a party to this. We don't allow those who send mail, who send emails, who send links, who are educated and trained to be able to not only recognize these signs, but also educate you and train you toward prevention and intervention. We don't take that step. That's an easy step to take. And I dare to say that within many churches, many organizations, many community outreach centers, there are people on their staff or near their staff that have this training. There are many people willing to provide this type of awareness, to provide this type of education. And they're not allowed to because we don't have those problems here. Because that's uncomfortable. No one's going to want to talk about that. I'm going to put it real plain for you. We can have the conversation now on this side of the ground, or we can have the conversation after the funeral. That's really a crass way to put it, isn't it? It's real talk.